Dr. Parikh and Professor Menon one by one. I want to come to you. Dr. Parikh first. India has also questioned, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has also questioned how there are different strokes for different folks as far as the WHO is concerned. That you have, the whole process of tier rating countries, and you place India in a particular tier which the government feels is unfortunate.
Oh, that's absolutely justifiable, Saket. That's a very legitimate and well-calibrated response. Though it's a partial response to the data, because the WHO has consistently been inconsistent in the way it has looked, for example, at China. You already alluded to that in your opening remarks. I can think of 2 or 3 examples that come to my mind right away, which bring to question the credibility of the WHO in its fairness towards all countries, which is the question that the Indian government is raising. At a time when the whole world was questioning what was going on in Wuhan, and there was a considerable ambiguity in what was happening, intentional, I might add, the WHO issued a reverse travel advisory saying that it was okay to travel to China. This is bizarre. So that was one instance of what had happened. Another recent instance, for example, has been, when they had to assign an alphabet to the coronavirus variant. The next logical alphabet would have been the Greek letter XI, which incidentally is pronounced as Chi, which happens to be the first name of the, the Chinese leader. And the WHO deliberated for 2.5 hours trying to decide what the next letter should be. And at the end of it, they decided that they should just skip it and go to Omicron. So they skipped a whole alphabet because, it was the first name of the Chinese president.
May offend the Chinese.
They even blatantly stated that this might have political repercussions. So I don't want to get into that, but the WHO certainly has treated China with kid gloves. It's not surprising that China is a major funder of the WHO after Trump pulled out the funding. But broadly, Sanket, if we have time, there are 2 broad things. One is the numbers, on which there can be debate. The spectrum can be wider. And the other is the implications of these numbers, on which I don't imagine there can be too much controversy. Now, if we look at the numbers first, when you arrive at the numbers, and when we either support or dispute those numbers, I see an intersection of 3 parts of a Venn diagram. One is the credibility of the WHO, which the WHO has time and again besmirched and tarnished through its own inconsistency and its own actions. Dr. Garg has already alluded to it, so I don't need to amplify that. You spoke about it, and I did too. So there's a credibility issue. But the other more pertinent issue is the methodology. You know what the WHO has used over here? Rather than going just by hardcore data, they have looked at websites. They have looked at the reports of journalists. Undoubtedly, these are important, but that's not the best way to look at it. The second thing, and I think that needs to be highlighted, they have factored in the indirect effects of COVID, not just the direct effects of COVID. So we say these are COVID deaths, but they're talking about COVID-related deaths. So they are, and to an extent that's justifiable, but I think that distinction needs to be made.
Okay.
So they have factored in that because of COVID, because of hospitals being full of COVID patients, a hypothetical number of patients who had other medical illnesses therefore did not get the treatment that
but
they
will
would
you
have
or will you not agree that, and I come back to the main point, Professor Menon, that we are, I really wonder, we are looking at 2 extremes. 5 lakh versus 47 lakh. What do I believe in? Which data is correct? If I say, for instance, I doubt, as Dr. Priya is saying, if I think that it is foolish to think that only 5 lakh people died in India, then will it be equally foolish to believe that 50 lakh died?
No, as always, there is a range in these numbers. And the interesting thing is that there have been multiple estimates by different methods, all of which converge on a range of somewhere between 3 million, which is 30 lakhs, and about 6 million. And the WHO estimates it somewhere in the middle of that at 4.8 million for India. Which number you trust, of course, these are models, they're approximate, and which number you trust depends upon what faith you have and how they did the modeling. Let me just make a couple of points here. First of all, the modeling is completely transparent. what they did, what the WHO did in its methodology, is completely stated on its webpage. It's described in detail for anyone who wants to know. And the people who developed these models are trusted statisticians from all over the world. So I think I have read the description of the methodology. It's a credible description. And although my own personal tendency would be to assume a somewhat smaller number of about 3 million or to 3.5 million, I don't see that the 4.8 million is anywhere really outside any credible range, even though that points to an undercounting of about 9.8, a factor of 9.8 over the Indian number, the official Indian number. The other reason, I think an important reason to make here is that if you look at the number of infections in India across the period of January 2020 to December 2021, even if you have any sort of credible estimate for that comes from serosurveys, and you ask, given what we know about infection fatality ratios across the world, across low and middle income countries, you do wind up inevitably with a number that is at least 2 to 3 times larger than the Indian number, maybe not 9.8 times, but somewhere certainly between 1 to 3 times at a relative minimum. So there are many, many different lines of evidence that suggest that India has undercounted its cases. It's not just one WHO number, and we should treat these different ways of thinking about the problem. We should treat them seriously, and we should ourselves come up with credible ways of estimating this gap.
Do you think that the first thing that the Indian government should do is to carry out some sort of an investigation, reassessment, recalculation, to have some correction in these numbers, rather than an outright denial, usage of words like preposterous, ridiculous, horrendous?
Absolutely. We do have the statistical capabilities in this country and the modeling ability to do better models. If we think that we can do a better job than the WHO, we should do that better job. We do need closure. People have died. Families have lost loved ones. We do need to understand what the larger implications of COVID-19 have been for India.
All right. Thank you very much. Really important points that have been made. We got a cross-section of opinion, which was very, very important to understand from the experts. On the other side of this break, which we are about to take, we'll get you the political argument. Remember, this has become a huge political issue in this country, the WHO's projections, like everything else. Lots of things become political in nature. But before we get you that debate and take a break, let's quickly take a look at some comments on the Coup app. Mohit writes, WHO has released the excess mortality estimates without adequately addressing India's concerns. Naveen writes, have COVID cases and case numbers also been manipulated? Is the government trying to safeguard itself by hiding the truth? Stopping for a short break at this moment. That political debate up next.